Are you telling me that you have a way to defer the tax situation there? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And so the first one I was referring to is a 1031 exchange, which only applies to investment real estate. The second one I'm referring to is called a deferred sales trust.
A real eye-opener to see that there are ways that people can use the regulatory framework, if properly structured, to invest 1031 exchange dollars in things that you would not think were like kind to what they exited from. So it was very impressive. I got to say, you are the first one I've seen pull this off, and I'm pretty hesitant to believe in a lot of these kinds of things. So it's a major feat for me to say, wow, this actually really worked. And it was really cool.
1031 is a way to shelter your income when you sell the thing. The DST is a way to avoid the 1031 and not have to suffer the time penalty.
Our career and during different tax periods, we've seen, these tax avoidance, tax minimization, offshore, all these different strategies undertaken to minimize or avoid taxes. And then I can tell you that, some of them are just not worth the trouble. And so I was skeptical. Admittedly, I was skeptical. I thought, oh yeah, here we go, another one of these, right? And then they say, no, it really is different, right? So look more closely. We looked more closely. We had, honestly, 2 years of conversations. 2 years. Now we were being due diligence at the same time that we were doing due diligence, but 2 years is a long time to be, sort of flirting with the idea of and getting to know the people and getting to really understand the transaction. Yeah, long story short, we got comfortable, although we are not tax attorneys, lawyers, or estate planning attorneys, that at least, from an investment perspective, that, it made sense to sell a highly appreciated asset, get liquid, hold that in this type of a deferred or installment sale type of instrument, and then just be in a position then to do the most important thing. I'm probably stealing your next question, which is time. They say, well, you can't make more time. You can. The Deferred Sales Trust, in a way, allows you to lengthen the investment time horizon for those assets after getting liquid, but before having to feel the tax impact. And from an investment manager's perspective, time horizon is the most important element in investing.
All right, hey everybody, welcome to the Capital Gains Tax Solutions Mastermind on the Deferred Sales Trust. Where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options, not having a clear plan, or not using something to help them defer and create and preserve more wealth is the enemy. And using something such as the Deferred Sales Trust is an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth, help your friends, family, and clients exit their highly appreciated business, cryptocurrency, piece of real estate, have some entrepreneurial freedom, have some retirement freedom, have some location freedom. And we're very passionate about what we do to help people have this freedom, because guess what? It's happening right now. Taxes are going higher. The government is in an all-time spending frenzy, and they're looking for ways to extract as much as they can in a lot of ways from those who have earned it, so they can pay for things that perhaps aren't as efficient. And so at the same time, they give us some cool ways to defer tax, and we want to make sure you understand those clearly, so you can create and preserve more wealth, and so that you can further your missions, your goals, your values. And we want to be the guide to help you do that. And I couldn't do it without the amazing strategic alliances, business partners that I have here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, including somebody by the name of Jake Miller. He is the CPA whisperer. He's a financial advisor extraordinaire. He speaks multiple languages. He's served in the armed forces and so much more. Jake, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, Brett. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And calling in from Miami today, we have an opportunity to meet with some music producers and a bunch of very interesting folks, and just excited, though it kind of looks dark and gloomy in this hotel room. Outside, there's some amazing weather, and I can see why you're looking to move to Florida at some point in the future.
Miami's an amazing place, and how cool is that? You're meeting with some fancy people, some rock stars over there, some music producers. By the way, this hat right here, you may not know it, but I picked it up in Miami. So I flew in for the first time. It was part of the Super Bowl, his little Super Bowl thing right there. And they handed it to me. My buddy, he gave me these tickets to see one of my dreams to see the 49ers playing the Super Bowl. They're my team growing up. So in Miami. So that's so funny. What are the odds that I'm wearing the hat today or you're in Miami? Where are you staying? Are you in downtown Miami? Where are you at?
I'm down in the financial district in Brickell.
Okay. I think that's where I was at. I feel like, I don't know. I don't really know differences, but it was right there by some amazing water, right by the bay there. Well, very cool, Jake. And I don't know if Pierce York is in the house. We also have Pierce York, our luxury realtor specialist and co-podcast host for Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Pierce, are you there today?
I am. How you doing?
There he is. He's got the Hawaiian shirt. Where are you? Are you going to the beach today? Some Mai Tais? What are you doing, buddy?
Oh man, I would love to go to the beach today. No, we're actually coming back from a wedding, so trying to get out of this 91 traffic out here.
Did you party like it was 2019? What'd you do?
I wanted to. Our youngest actually has pretty high fever right now, so we're juggling how to handle that and all that good stuff. So if I look tired, it's because I was up all night not sleeping.
You're a good dad taking care of the baby, man. You're looking good.
Oh,
and so Pierce,
man, yeah.
Pierce, give us a little bit of the vision while we're here. What are we doing here, Pierce?
Yeah, so the vision for the Mastermind group is to number one, kind of just share the knowledge that we have with you guys, so you can be aware of the options that you have. And then it's a place for you to come ask your questions. It's a place for you to come and walk through situations, scenarios, get to know us, get to meet us, and just really get a good understanding of how you can use these tools to your advantage.
Amazing. Jake, anything to add to that?
We help people with solutions. A lot of times they might be having the biggest transactions of their lifetime, or it might be something that they do over and over and over again. Whether it is one or the other, there's something that we can oftentimes help them with in regards to these highly appreciated assets that they might be disposing of or exchanging for cash or moving from one asset class to another. They might be selling out of crypto and then buying into real estate. There's just so many variations of what people might be doing, Brett. But with this Deferred Sales Trust and some of the other strategies we couple with it, we can help optimize the tax scenario that clients would otherwise have. And when I say optimize, oftentimes defer or offset, or even in certain circumstances, eliminate. And that's a very wonderful thing. That's kind of what gets me excited in life.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is it's so important to understand that the Deferred Sales Trust was made for times like this. The marketplace is uncertain in a lot of places right now, and it's an opportunity to diversify your wealth, to exit a highly appreciated asset using the Deferred Sales Trust to get some liquidity, to pay off the debt, and to perhaps move some funds outside of your taxable estate. In fact, I was speaking with a gentleman yesterday. He's in a 1031 exchange. He's got 8.2 million at the accommodator, and he's done multiple exchanges. He just sold an apartment complex in Arizona that he had exchanged from an apartment complex that he had purchased, that actually had sold to a client, an $8 million deal in Sacramento, California, a few years back. And so he's looking around and he's not really finding a lot, but he's around 50 years old. His net worth is about $20 million, and he's looking at the Deferred Sales Trust for the first time. Like, he had never heard of it. In fact, he thought it was a Delaware statutory trust. Of course, that's where most people get confused. Delaware is just another form of a 1031 exchange, has its place for sure. We use those for especially, mortgage over basis challenges. But long story short, he really started to focus on the bigger picture. And, Jake, I was talking to him about basically what's happening with the government and where they're at. They're attacking owners. They're attacking owners in a way like never before by raising taxes to all-time high levels, by reducing or let's just say probably letting the estate amount exemption expire, so that they have to, the biggest mousetrap, as you say very well, to capture this wealth, anything above 22 million married, 12 million single. And so I had to try to change, really just invite him into a conversation of what does your legacy look like long term. And the tools and the things you use in the past may not be what's best for you in the future. In fact, one thing that COVID has taught us is doing things the status quo way, how we've always done it, can be disastrous, right? And in fact, there's kind of a feeling here. I don't know what you're thinking, Jake, but there's some shifts going on. I've had some very, very smart, sophisticated people tell me that perhaps the peak was in February, and there's going to be likely some large shifts in the real estate market and the lending markets. The stock market's kind of a whole other thing, kind of more where you're at on that side of things. But we're getting kind of this pause in the market where people are very cautious. Interest rates are going higher, and things can be changing. And the question for him was, well, do you want something where you're going to be overpaying for a property right now? He goes, well, Brett, I can go into these Delaware deals and I can diversify into these couple different properties across a couple different states. And I said, but aren't you an entrepreneur or real estate person? I mean, this guy makes millions of dollars on deals. I go, do you want to be, just passive, or do you want to be entrepreneurial? He goes, I want to be entrepreneurial, but I'm not finding deals. I go, great. Well, these Delaware deals are tied up for 7 to 10 years. What happens in 1 or 2 or 3 years when there's opportunities and your money's tied up with somebody else that you have no control over, no liquidity, no diversification? Because you're right. I want to be able to execute on this. I go, well, what about even your estate tax? Like, if we can move these funds outside your taxable estate, you're at 20 million now. I mean, you do a really good job of building wealth that could easily, let's say you live to 100 years old, it could easily be 50, 60, 70 million dollars. And if we can get it outside the taxable estate now on this 6 million, because he had another 2 million that he put into another 1031. I said, what would that mean for you? And he goes, wow, you're having me thinking about things I've never thought before. He's still digesting all of this. But the point is, we've got to be asking these questions, because if you're not asking the right questions, Jake, then how can you solve the problem? So who does this work for, Jake? And what are some of the questions they should be asking if they're considering a deferred sales trust? And or if you're an advisor on here, or a real estate professional, crypto expert, what kind of questions should you be asking your clients? Help us with that, Jake.
Absolutely. So interestingly enough, this works for anybody that has $1 million transaction or higher, $1 million transaction of something that has been highly appreciated. So when I say $1 million, let's look at something that has very little or no basis, or $1 million over basis. That way the tax paying is significant enough, right? We've got the 20%, you're in the highest capital gains tax rate, plus there might be the Obama tax, and there might be state tax, everything else. All those other variables that may or may not be, they become a no-brainer, and kind of like a high-level rule of thumb is, let's look for something that's $1 million of taxable capital gains and above. And from there, we can analyze smaller situations. And as Brett always likes to, refer things to America's favorite pastime, which oftentimes is baseball, right? It might be a base hit, it might be a double, a triple, it may not be a home run, but if we can get $1 million capital gain or higher, it's a home run. So those are the types of projects that we're looking at. And as far as, something that happened just this morning, Brett, I had breakfast with a fellow who's a developer. He's a small-time developer, as he put it. He only has $35 million into various little developments out there. And somebody like him who is subdividing lots and then building and then, eventually selling to the end customer and everything else. This oftentimes is a question that we get a lot, right? Can we do this when somebody's considered to have inventory because they're selling so many properties a year?
So the answer is, it does definitely become a deal or not. If you classify as a deal, or how many of these you're doing. We can definitely do short-term deals. In fact, Jake and I just closed a deal in Texas for $15.6 million for a client who purchased a property on assignment. So he hadn't actually purchased it quite yet. He actually had a contract to buy it at 11, and then turned around immediately in basically the same escrow, sold it at 15.6, and was able to use the deferred sales trust as well for his exit of his proceeds. And so we could definitely do short term. If they're a dealer, it can be a little bit complicated, and it kind of depends on how they've set that up. So that's a situation where we'd want to bring that no cost or obligation consultation with the deferred sales trust tax attorneys, our business partners, or Jake and I, to really do an x-ray of the deal, an x-ray of the structure, an x-ray of how they've set everything up, and then do it on a one-by-one basis. Because there's basically a thing called there's a business, Are you are you a business? Are you a dealer? Or are you doing there now? Imagine they're selling the entire business of fix and flips or whatever else they're doing. And of course, we can always help the entire business. So it's kind of that in between area. It's a little bit gray, Jake, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, and that's why I brought it up, because I wanted to start the dialogue. It's kind of fun when we get into some of these specific situations with people, and the answer isn't always black or white, yes or no. But that's why we got to get in early so that we can provide a little bit of consulting advice and help people structure things in such a way that it can be optimized and it can be a type of financial tool, this deferred sales trust, that can allow individuals essentially to be reinvesting the proceeds of a lot of these capital gains type transactions and be able to reinvest with a larger piece of the pie. So if your pie is this big, and normally we have to cut it up into pieces to give to the government, and then you can reinvest with that. With the deferred sales trust, it's just net of attorney fees rather than net of taxes. And so you can be rolling over the proceeds into more and more deals. And that's kind of the magical thing of what we do.
Absolutely. That leads to like, what kind of investments can the trust be invested into? And it's very, very flexible. It can be stocks, bonds, mutual funds. It can be hard money lending. It can be ground up real estate. It can be cryptocurrency. It can be passive real estate deals. It can be active real estate deals. It just can't be put into like a primary home because that's taxable. Now, of course, you can take a distribution from the trust and you can use it for your down payment for your primary. You're just going to get taxed on that. So the really question is, how can I remain tax deferred, and what can I invest in? And it's very flexible for that. Also, what's the timing of all this? Do I have any like kind requirement? No, we established that you don't have to be like kind. You can go from crypto to real estate, or real estate to crypto, or stock, public or private to real estate, and vice versa. It's all within the trust, tax deferred and diversified. But there's no timing either. There's no 45-day or 180. So if you're used to the 1031 exchange, you're going to quickly find that the 1031 exchange is like Blockbuster. You got to return a movie in 3 days. If you don't, you have to rewind it. You get a penalty, and you have to drive and park, and it may or may not be checked out, or that's Blockbuster. And then I think came around Netflix. It was very much a seamless type of situation where you can just rent and get home. You never checked out. There's never late fees. You do pay some ongoing fees like Netflix. You do the same thing with us, but it's a much better experience. And that's really what we're trying to create, is an opportunity for you to be entrepreneurial with your capital, with your retirement, with the timing of what it is that you're doing. And we're here to help you build that out. So that being said, we're going to move into an open question and situation where anyone can ask any questions. No questions are off limits. It could be about the legality of the trust. By the way, if you're curious about that, thousands of closes, billions under management, over 26-year track record, over a dozen no-change IRS audits, including additional formal audits. Never had a single change in those audits, which is remarkable. Lifetime audit defense is provided. And that's awesome. We can talk about that. We can talk about common CPA type of questions about how what's if I receive income, how is it taxed? We can talk about how to make this an investment, not an expense. We can talk about how to couple this with Delaware statutory trust, 1031 exchanges, opportunity zones. So anyone has any questions at all, unmute yourself. You can also type in the chat. Just put your first name and the city that you're from, and then say, here's my question, or just unmute yourself and start asking the question. So who has a question for Jake, me, or Pierce?
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Where are you from? What's your first name? Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Okay. What's your first name?
Pekins.
Pekins. All right. Yeah, that's right. We emailed this morning, Pekins. Yeah, welcome, brother, man. And he's EXP too, right?
EXP cool. Commercial. Yep. So I joined EXP because of the amount of tools and resources that I can leverage in just the business model. So when I found out about capital gains tax solutions and the deferred sales trust, it seemed like a no-brainer. And that's what allowed me to dig much deeper into it, because I'm thinking to myself, why would someone use the 1031 exchange if you have a capital gain of $1 million or more? So that's one thing that I've been trying to trying to figure out and discussing with my clients what the best solution is for them. Aside from the having the gain of $1 million, what would be a con of using the Deferred Sales Trust? Why doesn't everyone just change from going to 1031 route and is doing this genius solution?
Yeah, let me touch on that for just a few, right? So I think the question is more or less, what are some of the common, what could be, well, you asked what the cons were, right? So there's always pros, there's always cons to everything. We always have to be able to analyze and help a client, from a fiduciary perspective, make the right choice. Now, you're asking this question because I'm going to assume something. I'm going to assume that it looks just really good, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Right, right. So, I mean, it just looks so good. So what are the cons here? Brett and I and Pierce, we're very good at helping people understand when it's not a good fit. Now, one of the things that would happen should, let's say, an elder individual. So I actually spoke with somebody who was in their late 80s, and so elderly, right? And they were looking at, essentially, they didn't need any of the money. They did not have any reinvestment need or desire. I mean, sure, we could have sold the property, we could have invested in marketable securities, that would have been fine. But at this stage in their life, their only goal was just to pass it on to their kids and get a step up in basis. Now, when you do a deferred sales trust, we're actually changing the underlying asset. And so if you sell a house for $1 million and you only spent 200 on it, there's not going to be a step up in basis if you then sell the house, put it into a deferred sales trust, invest in something else. Even if you go buy another house, it just doesn't work that way. All right. So there is that little piece right there for a very small audience, I would say, that for a common tax strategy for like legacy planning, when we're not hitting those limits of, hey, with the multifamilies, we're in the millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we're going to eventually come up on the estate tax issue, right? For those smaller deals that don't hit an estate tax issue, those deals that are in the hundreds of thousands or maybe the first couple $1 million, we should not disregard the benefit that the government gives to pass on to your legacy certain assets that are held after death and are subject to the exclusion, the estate tax exclusion, with a step up in basis. Utilizing the deferred sales trust, you can sell it for the $1 million and you're just deferring things, and then you're able to reinvest it in other assets. And that's for people who are actively looking to grow their estate, or people who are going to supersede that estate tax limitation and have a death tax issue. So again, some of our qualifying questions when we first meet with people is, what do you want to do with the proceeds? And so obviously if they have a plan, almost always, many of those scenarios fall under the deferred sales trust as being a pro. That is one of those scenarios where it's not necessarily in their best interest if their wishes and desires are to leave the actual tangible piece of property, so the real estate itself. So if it's not just the money they're interested in, but there's sentimental value in the house, so to speak, then, well, it's best not to sell it, right? I mean, it makes no sense at all to sell it. Let's pass it on to the next generation upon death. That's one scenario. Another scenario would be, well, you have no idea how often we get asked questions about people, and it just sounds like they're trying to do something illegal, like all the time. Oftentimes we have to very professionally and with a lot of candor just explain what the rules and regulations are. And if they keep pushing the button and wanting to do things that are not up on the on board side of things, then we have to just decline the relationship, the business relationship, right? And I would say that the deferred sales trust is definitely not a good fit for those, because it is a strategy that has not been abused, altered, or changed in 26 years. There's a lot of strategies out there that may have once had merit because they they had a solid handle on certain pieces of the IRS code that could be considered loopholes, what have you. But because people altered and changed them so much, they end up on the IRS's dirty dozen list, or they altogether throw up red flags, even though it might have been a good strategy at one point. But because people so commonly abuse it, it's now one of those strategies that we should just oftentimes avoid at all costs. And we want to protect the deferred sales trust from that ever happening, which is again why we choose very carefully who we do business with. And then of course, we want to make sure that their overall goals, objectives, and desires for the outcome match up with what a deferred sales trust really does. I hope that was helpful, Pickens.
No, that was very helpful. Thank you so much. I do have more questions, but I don't want to hold up the line too much. So I'll stay quiet.
No, I think you should ask one more, and then we'll let it open to everybody else.
Okay, great. So I'd like to figure out a way to integrate this into more integrated into my business plan, really, because it's a solution that a lot of clients could definitely utilize. And so what's the best way or your best recommendation for integrating this sort of solution within your regular workflow as a commercial agent? Is it to go to the website and submit a live deal? What are your recommendations on that?
Hey, Jake, I'll jump on that one if you guys can hear me okay.
Yes.
I had lost cell service for a second. We're on the way to Calistoga, Napa area for the weekend. And so it was kind of the back road. So if I cut out again, you know what happened. So great question. So the key is to invite your dream client or customer into a story, okay? And by that, you need to know the story of the Deferred Sales Trust, what you're getting to know. And you need to know the motivations and the reasons for why people are using it. And I'll give you an example. You already know a 1031 exchange, your EXP commercial, so am I. And you help people do 1031 exchanges, I imagine, to defer capital gains tax. And you know that someone sold a property for $1 million and bought another one for $2 million and sold that one for $4 million and bought another one for $8 million. And they're doing this 1031 exchange to create and preserve more wealth. And they had these motivations and small nuances behind it. The more you can understand the problem of the client and what's trying to be solved, the more you can incorporate the Deferred Sales Trust into their story. And so instead of talking, just features and benefits, you really want to intimately get to know the client and what they're trying to solve, and then keep an open mind about what might be the best solution. And there are times when the 1031 exchange, as Jake was talking about before, is the right solution for people. There are times when it's not. Now, right now, more than likely, it's probably not, because cap rates are so low, interest rates are going higher, values are through the roof, and people are overpaying for properties. And across the whole country, it's happening. And so you got to be cautious and take a pause to not necessarily look at the 1031 exchange for those reasons, okay? But that doesn't mean they can't find a reason to do this. So the key is, what are those stories? Well, the stories, as you come on these masterminds, we're going to share deal close stories. In fact, I don't think we've shared the deal close story of the week. I will actually share a live deal I just went into contract here in a minute I didn't actually close yet, but it went into contract yesterday. And as you get to understand those intricacies, you can become like a doctor. Think of yourself like Dr. New Jersey Apartments, right? Or whatever else that you're selling. It could be retail, industrial, but more so Dr. Capital Gains Tax. You want to diagnose what their problem is and then help them solve that by providing the Deferred Sales Trust as a solution. And so that's really what it is. Now, what does that mean practically speaking? Well, you can do DST man on the street. In fact, I have some videos on YouTube where I'm literally walking properties in Manhattan Beach, in California, a $5 million property, in San Diego, a $12 million property, in Sacramento, a $7.5 million property, where I'm explaining to the audience as I'm making a video why to use a 1031, why to use a Deferred Sales Trust as it pertains to their exact numbers. Hey, they bought the property for $1 million, they're selling it for $5 million. Here, they're in this age of their life. This is what they're looking for, looking to retire, looking to be passive, or they're looking to be active. Jake and I just did a Bitcoin sale for a client. She sold $5 million worth of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is at $54,000 a coin. Part of it to dollar cost average when Bitcoin was so high. And now we're looking back at it, Bitcoin dropped to $25,000 a coin. That was amazing, right? She has an extra, she had sold at a peak and was able to defer the tax. But why? There's always more underneath that. The reason was she wanted to invest into a business venture with her college roommate. She wanted to start something different and new and diversify and get some liquidity and put some money into the stock market to be a little more conservative. So that's, I know, kind of a short answer. And then the thing is, you start making videos about this, start obviously meeting people with this. And if you want to be really fancy, you get a YouTube channel and you start a podcast and you start interviewing your past clients and why they did a 1031 exchange and why that 1031 exchange was frustrating. And what would it mean for someone to have diversification, liquidity, the optimal timing opportunity to buy real estate at a discount with a new depreciation schedule, to be able to exit other assets that they might have. And so I know that's kind of a long answer, but you're the first step, which is learning about it and understanding it. And then step two is actually, inviting your customer, your client into the story, making sure you understand their problem, and then using the deferred sales trust as a tool to solve that problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I don't ever want to sell something that the client doesn't need or doesn't integrate with their goals. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I appreciate that.
And here's the key, and I even have to remind myself every day: don't assume you understand their mission, their values, their goals, and what they're trying to achieve. Don't assume you know that. And sometimes they don't even know that right away. On some of what you have to work with them and help to bring that out. And then you really have to listen, and then really try to understand where they're coming from. And until you've established that connection there, and this is kind of just sales 101 or even communication 101, right? You don't want to be so excited that you say, "Oh, I've got the solution for you." You're like, but you didn't even understand what my problem was. And so it's like, don't go past, step one, to deferred sales trust, step 2 or 3. If you don't get that, I'm not saying you don't know that. I'm just reminding everybody on here, right? We really want to come alongside and uncover. So let me tell you the live story to give you as an example. So I have a client. I've been working with them for about 14 years in family. They're selling an apartment complex, 48 units in Sacramento. And that's how I started in this business, is multifamily brokerage, before I learned about the deferred sales trust. So I have this relationship for a very long time. I've helped them throughout the downturn and the crash, helped them with their management, with their renting, with their strategy, with refinancing. Like, I've been their kind of consultant all along the years. Fast forward, they're ready to sell. The patriarch, the father, passed away about 7 years ago, and I'm working with the family now. Most of the family, all the family, in fact, is in Florida or Colombia. They're no longer in Sacramento, California. And the property, we put on the market about 50 days ago. We had a live auction, and they're asking these exact same questions. Even after knowing me for all these years, we're not going to assume the deferred trust is the best solution for them. We're going to try to turn over every rock to find a 1031 property that makes sense. But the deferred sales trust is a peace of mind in case their 1031 fails. But they're looking in Tampa right now for apartment complexes. This is mainly where they're at, in Orlando and Jacksonville, kind of that area. And we're not finding anything. In fact, it's so crazy. That might be the hottest market in the entire country. Miami is probably the hottest in the country for sure. So Florida is just completely overpriced for most deals. So we're going to do our best to find it. But we're going to be smart about this. We're not going to go out on a limb and just try to hope and pray that we find something within the time period. We have the deferred sales trust, plan B. And so anyway, contract for $7.516 million. It's over it's about $158,000 a door. That represents somewhere in the high 3 caps, by the way, on current numbers, which is remarkable considering the interest rates are now at 4.5% to 5%. Incredible. They have a lot of room to rent. So there's definitely upside in this property and opportunity for the buyer to make some good capital. But they were able to exit at a high price. Got about $1 million or so in debt, and so everything else that happens, there's $1 million test, and their net operating income, averaging net expenses of $20,000 a month. Well,
Brad, you're breaking up a little bit. Are you on Wi-Fi?
but
Hey, Brett, we can't hear you anymore.
Yep, he's driving. Okay.
Maybe he's trying to
So-
connect to different Wi-Fi networks.
So Pierce, I'm going to do some rapid fire questions at you. Are you ready for this?
I'm always ready for your rapid fire questions.
We'll let Brett come back to where he was when he comes back in. But first and foremost, Pierce, can we do this for a deal that's already behind us, already done and sold?
Have you taken constructive receipt?
They have the money in the bank account.
No, sorry, but we can do it on your next one.
Very nice. I like the way that you say that. Can the person choose their own trustee, like a friend, an uncle?
No, unrelated third-party trustee.
Okay. And are there millions of trustees out there?
There's 13.
Okay, so it's not just any random
It's
person.
not
that can-
just any random person. No,
that
you
can
gotta
wear the
know
hat.
what you're doing.
Right. And
You gotta
and who
keep
do
it
we-
compliant.
Who do we think is the coolest trustee out there?
We think Brett's the coolest trustee out there.
We have to say that way he's not in the room, right?
Well, he's not listening.
But why do we think that? I mean, what's so special about him?
Brett's on top of it, man. He's just squared away. It's just
So
he's on the
there's-
ball. He's not gonna drop it. Like it's just he's compliant. He's on top of it. He's consistent, disciplined.
So there's never been a deal in my experience with Brett that didn't go through because of the team. That doesn't exist. So everything you're saying is exactly on par. Like he's on top of it. He's responsive. He's got a digital acumen way high, right? Like he understands technology. He can make things happen. He can overnight a signature with a notary. He's got banking connections, like everything that is necessary, right? From a trustee standpoint and a fiduciary perspective from the trusteeship of a trust, he's got that taken care of. He's got that in the bag. I've just got a few other questions here that are coming in from the group. Let's see here. Oh, start to finish. Pierce, let's say somebody's selling a house. What is the process of getting everything done?
So the process is I start every conversation with this. It depends on your unique situations and how things are structured. But a high level overview and a very just basic concept would be you have an asset, right? Highly appreciated that has a significant capital gains tax. What we would do is we would line up the ultimate buyer, and then before we close, we're going to interject an unrelated third-party trustee. That's Brett, who's going to purchase the asset for the same price we're going to sell it for. So if you're selling it for $5 million, Brett's company is going to buy it for $5 million, and then he's going to turn around and sell it for $5 million. The ultimate buyer is going to fund the trust, however they're going to do that, cash, financing, hard money, whatever. And they're going to take title and walk away, assuming it's a property, and walk away. When the dust settles, there's a pot of $5 million. After we pay off the debt and everything, we're going to turn around. We're going to write you a note for the proceeds at a preferred rate of return, at which we've already discussed with you and your professional team, sat down beforehand and kind of mapped everything out and gotten a plan and got everyone on board. That is actually step one, by the way. So get in early and get everything squared away and explained. But then we're going to write you that note, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to execute on the plan that we came up with. And so that's kind of the process. And then once you find a deal that you want to go into, or a real estate opportunity pops up, or a business venture pops up, or whatever, then we can go ahead and we can structure it the best way depending upon your unique situation, and go from there.
Very good. Well, I'm going to try to say what you said, but I'm going to use my words.
Mine are simple words. I don't have fancy words.
Well, I'm going to use different words. I'm not going to say that they're simple or complicated or any of that. But sometimes repetition is helpful for learning, right? And so essentially, if we have a deal, and I use Beckons to help me sell a commercial piece of real estate, right? So I'm the client, Beckons is my agent, and then we're going to use the Deferred Sales Trust, right? So in the very beginning, as I'm doing contracting and everything else, I work with Brett and the team, and we get a trust set up. Right before the transaction, I'm going to transfer my property into the trust, but I have to do something there. That's kind of like a pre-sale, right? I got to exchange my property that is in my name to move it into the trust, and I get a promissory note for that exchange. Now that the trust has the property, the trust is going to sell it to the buyer. And once that occurs, the trust then receives the proceeds, and the trust can, at that point, reinvest those assets. There is a 20% liquidity requirement, so we can't just reinvest 99% or 100% of the assets. We have to, well, we can, it's just, we have to do it in such a way that at least 20% of it is liquid. And what I'm getting at here is, if you're selling a commercial piece of real estate, we're accustomed to always having to take out the realtor fees, the attorney fees, escrow, all this other stuff, right? We also have to maintain showing that, hey, we can make payments on this promissory note back to the original individual who owned the property, right? That's me. I like to own stuff. So I always choose myself when it comes to that. Own it and then sell it, right? And in this scenario, let's say that Beckons, what's the last commercial deal that you did?
I'm working with a auto repair shop right now, but it's not a large deal. It wouldn't qualify for this.
Okay.
So let's say it was $1 million. Let's say it was $1 million.
Yeah, or just add a zero to the end.
Okay, let's say it was $10 million.
$10 million. I like this. Okay, very good. So we're gonna do $10 million, and that $10 million note, I'm gonna get an interest payment on that note occasionally, right? And so we have to maintain so much in cash, or we have to make sure that there's enough cash flow that I can always be paid out on that, which is why we retain about 20% of the deal in marketable securities, or something that can, within a week's time, be liquidated, and we can prove to the IRS that there's available cash, that it's not all locked up in hard assets or in aggressive and volatile assets. Now, some people might say, well, goodness, the market has become rather aggressive and volatile. There's a certain way to invest within the market to help prove liquidity and at the same time avoid some of that volatility and stay ahead of inflation. So again, that's the job of the financial advisor. When it comes to a deferred sales trust, you're almost marrying yourself to a team of people, one being the trustee, and in many scenarios and circumstances, what we call a financial advisor or an asset manager, somebody who from a corporate or a trust level knows how to deploy cash into marketable securities, or liquidate and then deploy into the next real estate deal or into the next business deal, whatever it might be that you're waiting for to come across. The powerful thing here, and I think in the very beginning, Dave Young talked about this, is that the deferred sales trust puts the power of time back in your hands. And at the end of the day, that's oftentimes the very best thing I can tell my clients who are looking or considering this strategy or this option, is no longer are you looking at a 1031 where you have to do, within 45 days, identify a property, and another 100 days, you have to deploy the cash. Here, you don't have to sell in a high market and then go buy in a high market. You can diversify your underlying asset. You can come out of Bitcoin into real estate, out of real estate into marketable securities, or go, as Brett shared, a mutual client of ours, sell out of Bitcoin and then go invest in your friend's business. All of that is possible within the certain requirements of what this team that we bring to the table provides for Mr. and Mrs. Client. And with that, we might actually wrap up a little bit early today. I know I've got another meeting I got to jump to, and we want to make sure that Pierce doesn't drive off the road.
Thank you.
Brett, if he comes back in about 10 minutes, he's going to feel lonely because I think we might shut things down. Unless, of course, Beckons, you have any last questions. I have about 3 more minutes to be here.
Well, I appreciate you going through the whole process. That helps out a lot. That financial advisor that you mentioned as part of that team, is that usually expected of the advisor to, is that usually expected of the client to understand exactly where they want to reinvest their money, or would that be part of the capital gains tax solutions team to advise and say, well, this would be a good option, that would be a good option, if they're only used to exchanging like kind?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And in fact, it's a little bit of a loaded question because I actually serve as the financial advisor for a lot of these, not all of them. And we also work really well with other financial advisors. But a financial advisor, it's not just any financial advisor. There's a little bit of education that goes behind doing a little bit more of what I call a corporate management. We have to make sure based on the client's goals. So if the client's goals are, hey, whenever that next real estate deal comes up, I want to be able to have the liquidity within my deferred sales trust. That right there is an impediment to a lot of financial advisors who only know how to invest for the long term. Because we're talking about short-term investing. And then again, that's more like corporate asset management, where in a big corporation, we may need to pay taxes, or we have inventory that we have to buy within 6 to 9 months, but we're going to go make 4 to 8% or sometimes 12%, something opportunistic in the meantime, but it doesn't put at peril or at risk our holdings, because we know we're going to have to spend that money. We're going to have to deploy it. We have to buy inventory, we have to pay taxes. I mean, some of these very large expenses that big corporations have, right? And so that's kind of how we manage money within the trust based on the client's objectives. We build an investment plan. We do this with Brett's team, but then the financial advisor, who is more than just a financial advisor, right? More like a CFO level type financial advisor, helps the client navigate and sometimes coordinates with their personal financial advisor, but helps them navigate the funds of the trust, how they should be invested, and what timing they plan to deploy the funds. And they may not know. It may all be predicated upon that next deal coming up. We don't know when that's going to be. So how do we invest in the short term and make enough to help pay on that promissory note payment, as well as ensure that the client's overall goals and objectives are accomplished? That is a little bit of a journey. It's a little bit more extensive than a typical fact finder or risk tolerance questionnaire. There's just more involved. And that's why it's like you're literally bringing a team to the table. You've got Brett and his client experience team. You've got Pierce, and you've got myself and a handful of other financial advisors that know how to do this type of investing within the trust.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's actually pronounced Pekins.
Pekins. I'm sorry. No, I appreciate the correction.
That's all good. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
No, we appreciate you all the way from New Jersey. So your questions today have been very valuable. Other people have actually commented that they appreciated the answers to your questions. So thanks to you. Not everybody else had to speak up. All right.
Glad.
Well, Pierce, I have time for one more question. If there's one more question out there, if not, we can talk about how people can reach out and get in touch with Brett, myself, and Pierce. Pierce, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so you guys can reach out to me at kingdomluxuryrealty.com. I'm also the co-host of the podcast, so you can see me on there. And if you guys have any specific needs down in the Orange County area, looking to sell primary homes or commercial real estate, I'm actually working on a deal right now where a gentleman is going to be selling a mountain house. He's going to have almost $500,000 gain, a couple $100,000 capital gains tax. And we can talk about this next week because I know we're running out of time. But what's interesting about that deal is that he actually wrapped, that's a private money note on a seller carryback, and he also added on an extra $500,000 for a business that he purchased with that gentleman's money as well. So it's an interesting dynamic on how he's going to figure that one out. So the DST is going to be hopefully an integral part of that. But he's also got another $10 million building that he bought for about $1.5 million that I just got the listing for. So we'll be listing that. And that's a nice, pretty fat $2 million capital gains tax out here in California. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the works with that. So you guys can reach out to me at kingdomluxuryrealty.com. My email is pierce@kingdomluxuryrealty.com. And you can also catch me on the podcast.
Very good. How do people reach out to Brett Swarts?
Go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, and there you can do all sorts of stuff. And also our YouTube channel, just YouTube, in the little search bar, you can YouTube Capital Gains Tax Solutions or Deferred Sales Trust or any sort of the keywords around capital gains tax. They'll most likely be popping up.
Very good.
And you can find a ton of information there.
Absolutely. Not only a lot of information, you can register to receive emails, get on the newsletter list, and you can be on our weekly call here, as well as on strategic. On my website, we have strategictaxsolutions.com. So capital gains tax solutions, strategic tax solutions, kind of works hand in hand, right? And then there's an 800 number you can also reach out to, 1-800-773-1848, as well as there's a booking tab on my website. So thanks everyone for being here today. Thanks for participating. We appreciate everyone, and have a wonderful weekend. Fantastic Friday. Success to all, and we'll see you back here next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jake. It's good talking with you.